Alright, hi guys, welcome to a tutorial on NS Notification Center. And how we'll be using it today is by changing views using a UI segmented controller. So as you can see here, I've already got my root view controller. So I'm just going to go across here. A root view controller embedded into a navigation controller. As you can see, there's nothing at all connected to view 1, view 2, or view 3. And the size that I've set these to is iPhone 5, which is the 4-inch. So you can just click across, click the top view here, and size iPhone 4-inch. You can go 4.7, which is an iPhone 6, or 5.5, which is the 6 Plus. But for today, nice and simple, just one view. So let's get into it. The first thing that you are going to want to do to use NS Notification Center is you're going to want to create a NS object. So we click on the left, click on your main file and right click on it and go down to new file, and we're going to create a Cocoa Touch class. And we go next, and we call that button handler, and then you click next and it'll ask you where you want to save it to, which will be into your project. So I'll show you that now, and it's going to save into the project and then create. It's already highlighted there for you. Just hit yes, click on it, and then it'll create the folder down here. So here's one that I've already prepared earlier. Now what we want to do is change the song. Nope, doesn't want to change. Oh, there we go. I'm listening to a Tomorrowland music collection, if you can hear that in the background at all. So the first thing that you need to do is import UIKit, UIKit.h. It'll already come preloaded with foundation.h. The reason why you need UIKit is because you need the user interface controls, which in our case is a UI segmented control. If you're using a button, you don't really need to import it at all if you just use a button and you're connecting it. But in our case, because we're using a segmented controller, segmented controllers have indexes, and of course for index selection 1, 2, 3, we'll be using the sender to notify it. So I'll show you that now in buttonhandler.m class. As you can see here, I've got a handle button 1 sender. This is if you're using buttons for a custom navigation or anything really, anything you really like. But in our case, if you're using a button, you wouldn't need to declare a button. You just connect it, and I'll show you that a bit later on. Anyways, the segment changed. So self.segmentController equals sender. So essentially what we're saying is the segment control that we've declared here is equal to sender. Now that means that, of course, whenever you click on the segmented controller, it'll be received here, it'll be picked up. And then we're using a switch statement, so to check for which index. So for example, self.segmentControl.selected segment index is equal to 1. The index is equal to 1. We are calling NS Notification Center to post a notification called notify button pressed 0. You can name this whatever you like, but in our case it's nice and simple. Notify the button pressed was 0. And because we've got 3 segments, we want to make sure that we've got notify button pressed 0 for index 0, notify button pressed 1 for index 1, and notify button pressed 2 for index 2, which I'll show you that here. So if we click on our segment controller, all I've done here, by the way, guys, is I've dragged a UI segmented controller into the navigation controller. It automatically centers it for you. And up here you can see that you've got your segments up here, Now I've got 3, you can have as many as you like, providing that you declare them correctly. And then you've got segment 0 for, of course, 0, which is first, 1, second, 2, third. And there's nothing in my view here at all. It's just a plain blank view controller. Now that we've done that, what you want to do is you need to see how I've got it already declared here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and you want to type in your area down here, object, and drag an object into the top of your root view controller. Select it, and you want to go to Identity Inspector here, and you're going to type in button handler, and it'll automatically come up if you've declared the button handler correctly over here. Now that we've done that, select your segment controller and use Control plus drag, and as you can see here, we've got the option for handle button 1 or segment changed, and we're going to select segment changed. Now that we've done that, I'm just going to explain here again. Whenever you select first, it'll post a notification throughout your application, and what your application, there needs to be code in your application to listen for that. So we have that now, we've declared that in our viewController.m, as I'll show you in a moment. ViewController.h, so your root view controller view, you need to declare a property of type UIViewController, and you can call it whatever you like, but in my case, I've called it content, and that's all you need in there. Now in your viewController.m file, you've got a notify the root view when the button was pressed. So as I said before, you're posting a notification. Here, you're adding an observer. So you're saying, hey class, we need you to listen for notify button press 0 or notify button press 1 or notify button press 2 or whatever you've called it. And when you hear that, you want to perform a selector. You need to perform an action, which in our case is a method called change view 1, 2, and 3. And the reason why I have 3 different methods is, of course, there's 3 different indexes, 3 different buttons being pressed. And what that does is change view says we're declaring a name for the storyboard, which is at main. So NS string storyboard name. Then we're saying UI storyboard with name is called main in the bundle nil. UI view controller VC storyboard, and we're instantiating a view controller with the identifier view 1. Now we haven't named our 3 views yet. Well, I have, but I haven't shown that yet. So what you need to do is you need to name each one of your view controllers that you plan to use. And how to do that is, again, in Identity Inspector, you want to go to Storyboard ID and name your views appropriately. So View 1 and View 2 and View 3. So now that you've done that, in your viewController.m, View 1 is present. Now what happens is self.content, which is the property that we declared in .h, is being set to the VC. So our view controller is now set to the content we've declared here. But we need to declare the size and position of the new content, which of course self.content.view.frame, CGRect, and I'm saying 10 below the navigation bar, 65 across from the left of screen. We want it to be 300 wide and 450 deep. Now you don't have to have it at these height and width. You can have it filling the entire view controller. That's entirely up to you. And of course, copy and paste your change view 1 and do that 3 times or however many times you like. Just change the name to change view 2, change view 3, and of course make sure you change the identifier as well. And then what you also need to have in your viewController.m class is a delock, which tells it to remove the observer from the self. So anytime that you press the notification, make sure that it removes the observer whenever you leave the view. So that way other view controllers can also listen to it without viewController M interfering, so to speak. So you only want the notification center in this particular view available whenever whenever your root view or any other view you're using is present. Now, the most important part of this and how it all works is this piece of code here. So set the new content inside the root view. So it's void set content UI view controller star content. Now if self.content, so it's checking for the new content, if self.content is true, if there's something present, we want to remove that content from the super view, from the root view control, and remove it from the parent view controller as well. So that way we're making sure that all grounds are covered, everything is blank. Make sure that you've also got self.content.view for removing from super view. You don't need it on the second one. Now you add the new content to display. So self.content equals content, what we've declared here. And now we want to add a child view controller and set that to be self.content now that it's been set, and move it to the parent view controller. And finally we add a subview, add it as a subview.view. Now if that's a bit confusing for you, don't stress too much. Your child view controller is content, so think of the parent view controller as your root view, and we're creating a child view controller. Now we're moving that child view controller to the root view, so we're saying now it's here, it's in this one. And finally, to display it, we've got to create that view as a separate view of its own within, so we're adding a subview. So to add a subview, it's kind of exactly that. It's a subview. It's an addition to the current view. So now that we've done that, we're going to run it. Get some music for you. Ordinary song. Another one. There we go. More Tomorrowland. While we wait, it's taking some time. There we go. Build succeeded. Simulator. Okay. Notice how there's nothing popped up when it first loads, but when we click, we've got button 2 pressed and the second view, button 3 pressed, so everything's connected just fine. So the last thing that we want to do is make sure that one of those views, whichever one you want, loads. So we're creating a new one, new there, so self, and we can add whatever one we want, but in my case we've got change view 1 and just select it to self. So now when we press play on our simulator, it loads that very first view off the get-go. So here we go. And straight away, once it's finished loading, the first view controller is there. So there you have it. NS notifications and how to use it with a segmented controller. This way it doesn't load all of your 3 view controllers at once. It's listening for the call before it starts to load them by instantiating in your views. And that's all you need, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Pop a like on the video if you like. If not, not too fast. If you've got any feedback, post it in the comments section. Otherwise, look out